just in general, today's session, is we have an hour together allotted. The first 30 minutes, really just focusing on the core elements of the RFP, wanting to really focus and spend time on answering people's questions, right, getting answers out there. And then we'll go into these breakout rooms, which is really just additional time for us to kind of like discuss issues or questions that you might have personally. We were thinking about the needs and just trying to make space, like I said, for artists to talk to other artists and for folks to dive into that community, the questions and the asks that are being asked of the artists regarding kind of engaging the community and allowing the community to support in the installation of the artwork itself. So there's a room that we'll talk about that too. But first, I would love to just like introduce the facilitators who are on the call. So if you want to just unmute yourselves, maybe Linda, you want to kick it off? And then you can popcorn it.
Absolutely. Hi, good evening, everyone. My name is Linda Bonilla. I work in New York City Parks in a division known as Partnerships for Parks. And I am also a practicing artist. So it's very nice to have you join in tonight to learn about this great project that we have at Concrete Plant Park. Thank you. I'll pop it over to Sharon.
Hola, hey everyone, my name is Sharon de la Cruz, Director of Sustainability at the Point CDC and also a practicing artist. So I'm excited to share words of wisdom, I guess, and just try to figure out basically how to make this RFP process the best that it can be and the smoothest that it can be. And I'm going to pass it to Dariela.
Hi, everybody. I'm Dariela Rodriguez. I'm Director of Community Development at the Point CDC. And I am not an artist, but I love surrounding myself by artists and art. And I think that it's really important as we do these processes to listen to our communities and make these RFPs more accessible. And that's why we're here tonight. I'm really excited to support folks in submitting their proposals and thinking about how they can submit proposals, not just this time, but in the future. And I'll pass it over to Daniel.
Hi, my name is Daniel. I'm a colleague with Nathan. I'm the Greenway coordinator, and I just love and appreciate the art space in the Bronx. So I'm just honored to be around all you folks. Thank you, Nathan.
Thank you all for introducing yourselves and recognizing I haven't actually acknowledged who I am. My name is Nathan Hunter, and I work for both the New York City Parks Department and for the BronxRiverAlliance through a public-private partnership that exists. And I'm based at Concrete Plant Park, where this mural will be installed and manage a project called the Foodway, a series of edible gardens that exist right there in the park, integrated into the park landscape. And so, yeah, the concepts around wellness definitely are something that are steeped in my head, and I hope to be able to kind of answer questions and help shape this experience with y'all. I also will be one of the main facilitators moving forward with this process, so the space will become pretty familiar. And so person behind the screen, the emails that this is going to is often going to be me. So just an opportunity to pick my brain and just know who I am. But I think without further ado, since we really want to hear from y'all, let's move forward. So I really just want to kind of go through the meat and potatoes of the RFP, and we're going to break it into sections. The first section, or kind of the requirements and guidelines for this RFP, is first and foremost really acknowledging that we are looking for Bronx-based artists. And really, what does that mean? For us, it's folks that live here, that are based here in the Bronx. We're ultimately trying to uplift those that have been here for generations or for since their childhood, but really anyone who's based here in the Bronx, right, who live here. So not folks who live in Manhattan and commute here, or any of that kind of situation. But we've got here, really the meat and potatoes, which is the fact that you're able to build and design a mural that incorporates themes of inclusive community wellness. So this is mental wellness, emotional wellness, physical wellness, things that, all the different layers, right? Not just like physical wellness. Able to build a design that stands the test of time in a public park and on a large metal canvas. So this is a 40-foot by 8-foot shipping container that is currently used for storage. And so we're just painting the side of the shipping container, and it's pretty large. I think thinking about that too, it's a very active park. It's a park that can be missed. So it's a place where often spray painting happens, right? Impromptu graffiti. So thinking about just that long-term test of time. A design that can incorporate community input. So as we're building a proposal, we want to make sure that community members, there are 2 engagement sessions that Dadiela will talk about a little later. And we want to just make sure that whatever design and proposal you come up with, community members can also add their thoughts and talk about the wellness factors they would like to see. And then also, the fact that we would like to see this being installed with community members. So the idea that the art can be built or has elements that community members can actually participate in. That participatory factor is a big piece of this RFP, and one of the main reasons that we didn't, we wanted to open this up and see what people could offer. So a lot of people I think have been asking questions about just in general who's judging this. And so the way this process works, the grant recipient will be selected through an open application process. That's by you submitting your PDF complete application or proposal to art@bronxriver.org. And it will be judged by a committee of Bronx-based community members, art professionals, as well as New York City Parks representatives. And that's because the asset itself, so the shipping container, is a park's asset, so they own it. And then it's built, this will all be done inside on Parks property. So they very much need to be a part of this process. So again, I encourage you to hold questions till the end or put them in the chat so you don't forget.
Thank you, Nate, for that. So moving along, and we're just going to comb out eligibility. So folks, as Nate stated before, you Bronx, by Bronx, for Bronx, that's you. I see folks here, I recognize faces. So I think we're in light of where everybody's on point with that. Now, this is I think the part that we kind of expand upon. So specialized indoor training, education not needed. So we are opening this RFP to artists that are self-taught, that have done projects in the past with community members, that has done public art pieces supported by local schools, bids, any sort of kind of electeds, those are kind of examples where a self-taught artist has been engaged in public art service. So you don't need a master's, an MFA, but you do need to have, the history that backs that kind of action, that social engagement piece. Early to mid art career, so emerging artists, mid-career artists, you're just an artist that's active, period, and you have produced work. That's key. Modest body of artwork to submit for judges and to reference. So as you know, this will be an open, there will be a panel of art professionals, park people, and community members. So your work, whatever you send in the RFP, really makes the punch. So please make sure when you submit, it's clear, it pops. You don't have, it's a movie shop, but it's a movie shop that holds something. You have to just make sure presentation is key, because those images will definitely reflect on the other components of the application. Artists who are enrolled in a school, let's see, college or university are not eligible for art in the parks, inclusive, wellness, mural, and I love it so long, concrete plant park grant. And it's a formality. It's something that is just been observed by arts and antiquities and most general arts organizations. If you're a student, you are still in your process, but you could probably help artists, or you could participate in the social engagement component of whatever, whoever gets picked, and just get your name out there. So I don't want to discourage anybody who is a student and that's on this particular info session, but this is where we have to just work with park standards and just the regular arts and cultural industry standards. And then proposals for previously exhibited murals will not be accepted. So if you did have a beautiful art piece that was in another borough or another part of the Bronx, congratulations, but we do not want that. We want something original, something that has input with community input and all the key stakeholders and community orgs that are around that make concrete plant so vibrant. And of course, parks, it's on parks property. So therefore we like to, I understand like the criteria is like, we always want to have an original piece coming in to the parks. And that's it for me. I'll move on.
Hey everyone, so it's my turn to share some info. I'm going to be sharing some stuff about the application procedure. First, our deadline, and I want to give a big shout out to Nathan, who heard from our community that the previous deadline of August 8th, which already passed, was not enough time, and that deadline has been extended to the 22nd. The proposals must be in that email before 11:59 p.m. Please don't make us miss out on your beautiful art by not submitting by that time. In order to submit, there must be a resume, also current information and contact information in the format of a PDF file, along with a one-page statement that describes the artist's work in general. So your work in general, what is it that you usually use your art for and do, as well as a proposed concept specifically for this mural. It should include a detailed description that's no more than 2 pages. And remember, this should be like your ideas for how you're gonna do this mural, but I'll share a little bit more about some of the procedures. So not only the description of the actual idea for the mural, but also like renderings or images of what your idea is and what the proposed artwork is. Installation recommendations, that means how you're gonna install it and what materials you plan on using to paint or install. As well as maintenance recommendations. These are the products that we can use in order to maintain. And this is what has to happen. This is what I would have to do if someone spray painted it. I will have to come and paint that part again, or these are products that we can use, all those ideas too. We also are asking for 2 references, so names and contact information of 2 people who are familiar with your art, and 5 to 6 images of previous artwork. And the images should be labeled to just very briefly describe the image, where it is, what it is. And that's it for me. Oh no, that's not it for me. Also, the award details are, it's $5,000. This $5,000 includes your cost of materials. It includes your own labor, and if you need help or whatever, it includes all of that. It also includes maintenance. So if you need to buy a little extra paint, or if you need to buy cleaning materials for the container, those things should be included in your $5,000 award money. You would be responsible for facilitating 1 virtual and 1 in-person community engagement. And we're here to like give you advice and support on what that could look like today. But really, and this is why I was saying that your idea and your rendering should be just an idea, because the real goal of this project is that we get an artist who's able to, through 2 different ways, whether it's a virtual survey and a community meeting at the park, that they're able to gather information and talk to community about what physical, mental, all the different wellnesses, what does that look like in our community, and so that their experiences and their ideas are represented and incorporated somehow in this mural, so that it isn't just something that pops up without community engagement. And then that's the involved community members in the installation of the mural. So that means, like, I know that one time we had someone do like a paint by color. Sometimes we have an event and people are hanging around and whatever, whatever that looks like, we would love to hear your ideas of what that looks like for including community members.
Thank you all for supporting that kind of description of this RFP. I think, we wanted to really just hear from folks what the concerns were, what the barriers were to this work, or even just straight up questions. So I think this is a great point to kind of focus on that. Sharon, did we get any main questions that we should bring forward?
No, but I do have some questions to start with. I always, or like when I did one Ruby Bridges or like Ruby Walks on Hunts Point Avenue, I didn't know what it means to like maintain an artwork. And in the contract with DOT, because this is in contract with Department of Transportation, I had to maintain that piece for a year, and I didn't know what the heck that meant. So I am putting out the question, what does it mean to maintain something for a year? And perhaps if Linda and I, we could, or anyone on this Zoom room, if we wanted to put forth things that we've done in the past to maintain public artworks, I think that would be pretty helpful.
And we do have a question now in the chat, and that's a really good question because we were really talking through that, Sharon. So we also have a timeline question. So crazy, we didn't even say this is when this has to be installed.
So part of the definitely. Let's talk about maintenance of the project. But regarding timeline, if we wanted to just hop to that question first, is what it sounds like. The timeline. So we kept it flexible just because we had shifted this initial RFP date back. We're looking to have the judges review and select someone by the first week of September. By that Friday, there'll be an announcement. I believe that's September 4th, and the plan is to then, once the announcement comes in the following week, to start working with the artists and scheduling kind of these community engagement sessions. So early September, those would take place. And then hopefully by the end, so the goal or the dream is to have by the first week of October, the mural installed by. And I say this just because we have learned that there's some capital projects that will force our park to be closed this winter. And so we're aware of that. And we want to be able to enjoy this piece of art before the park closes for the winter. So we want to just acknowledge that and try to get the art up as fast as possible. And the idea of having it up by the beginning of October.
Thank you, Nate. I appreciate that. So how long does it need to stay up? So Matthew asked, how long does it need to stay up and maintained? So I guess in terms of reflecting on what Sharon had started and what Matthew has sent it on, because of the capital or the construction project that's happening, so it would be completed by the first week of October, you're saying? And so the artists typically would just be able to keep tabs on the park. I mean, it's just interesting because every artist has their method of how they could check in on their park, whether it's like the community organization that they're connected to, or we have the Point here, as well as the BronxRiverAlliance. It could be as simple as like, because we know artists, we're always doing other projects as well as teaching, etc. So just being mindful of your capacity too. Then you can always shoot a simple email, but the best thing you can do is come visit your art at the park. And before the season ends, well, I want to say like winter kicks in around, let's say like late November, December, although there's people there all year round, but because of the capital project, I understand that the general public won't be allowed in the park for those months, correct? So when is the ETA that the construction was supposed to go down and the park reopen?
We'll have access to the park again in March if everything goes according to plan. So it would be a true winter closing. And yeah, the idea is that I will still be going in there. Parks officials will still be going in there to just do routine checks. So we'll notify you if we see anything, and together we can kind of figure out a solution. Is what's in my head. I think what's most important is that you think about the way you're putting the paint on, the way that it's being layered and things like that. I think about often in past projects that I've worked with graffiti artists, they've been able to put a covering on top so that any graffiti that takes place, you can wipe off or wash off. There's some products you can use to protect your art. And I would advise or at least ask you to look into that if that's an option for what you're proposing.
I want to also share just a way for y'all to think about this. And I think that this also maybe answers Matthew's question in the chat, which is, will there be a new mural next year, or is it a changing mural project, or is it supposed to stay up as permanent? So we're asking for y'all to think about this as like a 1 year thing that you would need to maintain it. And we don't mean it has to be imperfect. If a little scratch happens, you have to come. No, we're talking about major damage that happens, a tag that happens to, you know, those kind of things, right? I would say, and Nathan, you could correct me if this is not how we should be thinking about it, but I would say, think about from here to December, right? Being able to take care of it, maybe check on it. Maybe you'll hear from us if something happens. But then March, when the park is ready to reopen, we would want to check on it again and see what the health of it is in March. And if it needs any repairs, then that would probably be the time. I would say, don't worry about it while the park is necessarily closed. We'll go back in March, and if there's something going on, I'm sure that you're gonna hear from us and know if there's anything that needs to be done at that point. So I also will say that we go into a lot of these projects knowing that technically we have to say they're temporary, but we try to keep them as long as we can. So in 2017, we got a container in the park. We painted it with the community, and it was supposed to be a temporary installation. That installation is still in our park right now, and we love it, and it's on another container. So as an example of, you know, we won't like on October 5th of 2020, you know, the next year, just, okay, your time is up and paint it over. That's not the plan.
Thank you, Daniela. Yeah, that's something great to emphasize. Yeah, Concrete Plant Park is a very unique place. If you haven't been there, actually, I don't know if anybody could just raise their hand in the chat. Who's visited or who's been to Concrete Plant Park? Okay, yes, the usual suspects, yes. Okay, yes, yes, yes. Okay, this is great. So I guess as I want to say is like, community members are very receptive to the art, all the creative components that has occurred at the park. It started with the floating barge known as the swale, and I think it's just elevated the park since then. The critical thing that's here to keep in mind with your RFP is that the community is there all the time, present, and just keeping the folks in mind. That's the key thing to note with your vision of your mural. And if the folks love it enough, just like Sharon's piece, it will stay there, and people will make sure it does. That's something I just like to add. And I'll pause. Does anybody else have any questions?
Or concerns?
Yeah.
I have another
Cool.
question.
Go for it, Sharon.
Maybe, sorry. Am I applying to this now? But there is the actually painting on top of the container versus like installing in the container. So meaning like drilling something in, like hanging something on the container. What's the difference? What can we do here?
I think the goal is to paint directly onto the container. I don't think that we're currently thinking about any other way of doing this. I think that
Like a mixed media.
the way that we're trying to do it is to paint directly onto the container.
Right. Well, just because these containers are parks property, I don't think we are going to be allowed to drill into them, or so maybe thinking about other materials to adhere onto, I don't know, like, or like parachute material or something like that to adhere onto the container, or some vinyl, those kind of components. I think maybe those will be the ones that could be considered. But that is a great question. And I think that's something that we could probably follow up with the Parks Division known as Art and Antiquities to verify if there's any sort of mixed media ideas that will involve something a little additionally than a tradition, than, you know, adding onto the mural. That's a great question.
I have a question. I thought it was that we were painting onto a canvas. Is that I thought that's what I read.
No, we're painting directly onto this container that is on the screen right now. Just one side of it.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and it is not a smooth surface.
Right.
It is a ridged container. I would recommend that if you have not been to Concrete Plant Park, please come. Now's the time to go visit, and you can see the container because it's already there.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. The bloom box, which is the other container that has been painted on, you could also study that one as well.
And just so y'all know, the person that did that did it like a paint by number thing. And basically did the outlines and put numbers, and then community members actually helped with the painting of the bloom box, and it was really nice. Not saying that y'all have to do that, but that's something for y'all to consider. Also, Nathan, I think that can you share a list of the examples of like the wellness kind of things that we thought of when we thought of how wellness has been talked about at Concrete Plant Park?
Yeah, I think that's a good question. So yeah, a lot of the imagery that when the funding came through and we were immediately thinking about the site, you know, the things that I think we should highlight, just because these are things that you'll probably hear from the community, are things like the fact that there's a bicycle repair station right across from this container, that this is on a greenway, so biking comes to mind. There's a long-standing community of fishermen in the park, and so the concept of both food and finding food, right? Whether it's fishing or foraging in the park, we have an edible food forest that exists right inside the park. And so a lot of our conversations are around both known edible plants as well as unknown edible plants, so both medicinals and like kind of just cultivated edible plants. We've done yoga in the park. We have healing drum circle that takes place in the park, using sound healing with Miss Patrice, art performances, dance numbers, music events, canoeing on the Bronx River, of course. And then, yeah, I think conversations around just like wellness activities, like taking care of our community, which means taking care of ourselves in a way. So things like stewardship. So like whether it's weeding gardens or picking up loose trash, I also include those into wellness. So I really encourage us all to think about kind of like the expansiveness of wellness. I often think about queer identities. I think about those that are typically on the margins, whether it's different abilities, whether it's like, yeah, all different types of things. I would love to just see all these images of kind of all these different concepts. That's personal. But what I think, whatever that speaks to you regarding wellness, but thinking about not just focusing on one element, but being expansive and inclusive. That's why I really held on to the title of inclusive community wellness, because it needs to be larger than just physical fitness or larger than just eating well. There's so much to it, especially around emotional well-being. I think coming off the coattails of 2020 and still living in this like chaos that is, I think it's important to acknowledge that we're all processing still, and we're all working on our mental health. Yeah. Any other questions? I had said at the beginning that we were going to break into breakout rooms. If that feels supportive, we can still do that. But if folks are also like, I've got what I need, I'm good to go, we can always skip that piece. But would love to hear from y'all to see how you're doing.
And specifically, again, the breakouts, we would, like Nathan, Daniel, and I would be in one conversation, and Sharon and Linda would be in another room, so that if you have specific questions for the artist, or if you have specific questions about everything else, we can answer those more efficiently. So again, it's really up to you guys. We structure this session so that we could provide some support.
And also things that may not be, you know, you think are like silly, but are really not, especially when you're talking about public art, because there's like weather involved. If you've never painted on corrugated metal, that's a question, right? We can probably answer that. I can answer that. So if you have any questions at all, please let us know.